Different authors write different ways and have different relationships with their audience, and those are all legitimate. John Green.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Leigh Hull.
And I'm Leigh Esses. Today's misconception and bad writing advice, we're dipping into a little more of the marketing in the writing world, and this concept that people repeat in the echo chambers that are social media forums, that other authors are your competition in writing.
It is unfortunate that this piece of advice or this idea is so pervasive. I see it everywhere, and it may not be said explicitly everywhere, but it's the way that some authors treat each other. It comes with this idea that if they're in your genre, if they're in your field, they can't possibly be useful. They can't possibly be your ally because you are competitors. Because if you're always being compared to each other, you're never going to be the top or whatever. And that's just simply not it.
And there are a lot of reasons why people will say this. One of the big ones that you will hear is from people who have run small businesses in the past. And any small business owner is used to competing with the big boys. The gift shop that I walked past today is used to competing with the big box stores during the holiday season.
So this translates often into those small indie authors viewing traditionally published and big name authors as competition, rather than as a source of knowledge or learning, or in some cases, a way to get your name known.
Another element of this logic is that readers have limited funds and limited time. So they're either going to read my book or they're going to read your book with their limited funds or limited time.
As a reader with a very large TBR pile, this is simply not true. Readers will always buy more books than they can possibly read in their lifetimes. And any of you who are also readers probably know this because you can look at your own very giant TBR pile.
This next one, I remember being guilty of thinking when I first dipped my toe into the industry, and that people who are disagreeing with this, so people like us now, are really just wanting people to purchase their stuff.
All they care about is having those other authors support them, and they'll never return the favor. And that really isn't true. I've been in part of a lot of different writing groups, author groups, and if you get into the right ones where people are honestly there to support each other, everyone supports the other. This is just one of those I have just not seen as true. But it is a difficult mentality to overcome if that's kind of how you're viewing it. An unfortunate kind of side effect from this particular piece of advice is that if somebody goes into publishing with the idea that other authors are competition, it cultivates this idea that readers will only pick up the better reviewed books. So as an author, I need to go poorly review other authors so my book stands out more. And that is such a toxic cycle if we listen to this idea that other authors are competition.
Overall, it's just really bad advice. And it is, like you said, very toxic because it makes every facet of this conversation very bitter. No one is going to walk away from any part of this conversation with a smile on their face. Everyone just sort of hates everyone. So this is not something you want to cultivate in your own writing circles and your own reading circles, and especially online. People are going to be seeing this and think this person's mean and not want to purchase your books if they recognize you at all.
I know we mentioned these a little bit, but let's get into the reasons why this is such bad advice. And I think the number one reason is that it makes you jaded against other authors if that's how you go into this world. But if you recognize and realize that most other authors are very helpful, it can really help you build and grow your own writing skills.
If you want to be the best author possible, then uplifting other authors is a great way to do that. You will build a great reputation. People will adore you for what you do as well as your writing itself. And if you're just starting out and you want to quickly grow your audience, like within a couple of months, just make it blossom, the easiest, fastest way to do that is to work with other authors.
Comp titles are a thing, but also co-authoring. There are a few authors that I have learned about because they co-authored some short stories with Brandon Sanderson. And I'm sad to say I still haven't picked up their books, but they're on my list. And that's the thing, is that because they were able to work with a big name author, because they were able to have that, suddenly they become more well known. And I'm interested in, they've grown their audience because they can share it with someone else.
You're one of the most faithful fans of Brandon Sanderson that I know, but you are not by any means a monogamous reader.
True. Very true.
And your audiences rarely are. Even if they only purchase your stuff and nobody else's, then they're only reading maybe 1 or 2 books a year at best. That's not your ideal reader by any means.
Sure, I like Brandon Sanderson. I also like Stephanie Garber. I also like Maggie Stiefvater. I also like J.R.R. Tolkien. I also like Patrick Rothfuss and Kristen Britton. And the list goes on. And then I will faithfully read all of those books.
If you think that this negative review campaign is going to make your book look better, it's not.
Don't leave negative reviews if you haven't read the book and actually believe that it was deserving of a negative review. If you hear this advice, which you probably will at some point in time, there's a few ways that you can kind of apply it instead. The first off is, instead of viewing those other authors as competition, view them as a way to learn. Successful authors have forged similar paths. They have walked the same way that we have. They all started somewhere, and that was not as a nationally published author. They started writing stories that were probably terrible, that will go nowhere.
And another thing to keep in mind is everyone has a slightly different version of success. Some people just want that financial stability, and then you're good. Some people really would love to see their book made into a movie. That's a completely different person, completely different view of what success looks like.
And for others, success is simply just having a book to be able to hold in their hands. Whether or not they make money off of it, whether or not they become popular or sell 1,000 copies, they just like being able to say, hey, I made this.
So treating other authors as competition doesn't affect their journey at all. Because they're already on the road to success. They're already taking those steps or already have the book in their hands. And so they have reached that goal line. It does no good to go, yeah, but it's just a book.
Yeah, it actually hurts you more in the end to think so negatively about others. Our motto here is write selfishly. And that's because we believe that writing, that publishing is an inward selfish pursuit. Not something that needs to be compared to others, not something that needs to be held up to a standard that others are holding. It is a standard for ourselves, each individually as an author.
So if I go on social media and someone suggests that in order to get more readers for my book, I should attack other authors, how should I respond?
Tell them they're wrong.
Yeah, I do that quite a bit. I'll attack the person who's telling me to attack other people, but I'm bitter.
The best thing to do is to remind people that readers read. They read a lot. They read a variety of things. I don't think I've ever met a person who will only ever read a single genre by a single author. Maybe a few people who just casually read Tom Clancy novels or something, but even they tend to branch out and try out, Brad Thor or something like that.
The more readers there are out there, the better. Because if more people are reading your books, it's more likely someone is also going to read mine. So instead of looking at it as you and I are in competition, you and I are on the same side against Netflix. Unless they decide to make my book series, Netflix, if you're listening, make my book series into a Netflix show. But unless that happens, as far as competing for readers' attention, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. you are on the same side as the other authors because you're competing against social media and other forms of entertainment.
Yeah, really, you're competing for time, and readers will spend a lot of time reading, but the biggest distraction is Netflix, the streaming services, all of that. So that's really what we're competing against, if you want to call it that. And the other way to respond is to just reach out to other authors. Ignore that advice, reach out and ask them about their story. Ask them about their journey, about what they're writing, how they're feeling. Become friends with other authors because then you can support each other. This whole podcast started that way because we got a writing group of people who wanted to work together, that wanted to collaborate and help build each other up in our own individual writing pursuits.
And consider your own goals as an author. Do you just want to have that book in your hands so that your grandkids can learn your grandparents' stories? Or do you want to make this into a career where you're working on pieces that might not be quite as fluffy and entertaining for you? But none of these other extra goals that you might have can possibly come if you don't publish that first. And you can't publish unless you
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.